Hey guys, so here's the review for the final. I'm going to try my best to not be too long-winded, but to explain things as much as possible. Like I said in the text, please feel free to text me, email, anything. If you have specific questions, we can go over it on the phone. So essentially each question was worth zero point 0.7 points. I think there was 144 total questions, some of which I gave partial credit for. So starting with the New Jersey tolerances, you guys at this point should know these. Plus or minus 3 is 0.12 to 0.37, plus or minus 2, 0.5 to 1, plus or minus 1, greater than 1 or 1.12 to infinity. Under power, plus or minus an eighth, 0.125 diopters, 0 to 6 diopters. Plus or minus 2% is between 6 and 12, and anything over 12 is plus or minus a quarter of a diopter. On the prism, it should have been, for horizontal, 0.25 each, 0.5 total. If it's less than or equal to 0.5, the PD must be within 4. If it's greater than 0.5, PD within 2. And under the bifocal seg location, it should have been plus or minus half a millimeter. On to the next page. As far as the tolerance for axis, comparing, it should have been off 2 degrees, which is a pass because it was ordered as a 1 sil. The left eye is off 2 degrees, which is also a pass because it was ordered as a 0.75 sil. Under the tolerances for power, I kind of threw you a curveball just to see if I could mess with anybody. Pretty much everybody did fine here. The sphere was off an eighth, so it passes. The total was off 0.375 or 3/8, that fails. The cylinder was off a whole quarter, that also fails, which means that this lens fails for power tolerance. Under the left lens, the sphere was off an eighth, which passes. The total was off a quarter, which fails. And the sil was off an eighth, which also passes. But since we had one that failed, the entire job fails for power tolerance. Now, my paper just looks like a lot like your guys' papers. It's kind of a jumbled mess. But what I wanted you to do was take the prisms that, how much everything was off, come up with your prisms here. So for the right eye in the horizontal, it should have been 0.49 or something close to that diopters of base in prism, which means by itself that lens would fail. The horizontal for the left lens should have came up to approximately somewhere in the neighborhood of 2.74 diopters base out, which means that fails by itself. When we then combine these two, we would have in-out prism. In-out prism is going to cancel. Those two subtract down to approximately 2.25 of total prism, which is more than 0.5. And then this job would fail because the original PD, go back to this sheet for a moment, was ordered at, oops, where am I at here? Was ordered at 66, although my paper's kind of messed up, but it came in at 63.5, which means it's more than 2 millimeters. In this case, it was 2.5. On to the vertical. The vertical should have ended up as approximately 0.46 diopters of base down prism, which would fail by itself. The left lens should have come up with approximately 0.86 diopters of base down prism, which also fails by itself. And then when you combine those two together, or in this case, down prism is going to cancel, they're going to cancel down to about 0.4 of total prism, which also fails. When we get down to the bottom of the sheet, where I wanted you to take all those prisms and then give me the resultant, you should have come up with approximately 0.67 at 43.2 quadrant 4, or 0.67 at 316.8, because in the right eye, we would have had base in and base down. So in and down on the right eye is quadrant 4. On the left side, you should have ended up with somewhere around 2.87 at 17.22 degrees, quadrant 4, or 2.87 at 342, 3.78 or 342 or 343, I wouldn't have cared. And you guys were off a couple of degrees here and there. Can't punish you for it. And we had out and down prism on a left lens, which is also quadrant 4. On to minimum blank size. What a couple of you guys definitely missed was you want to make sure you should have ended up with 64 and 66 as your largest minimum blank sizes because of the vertical decentration of that lens, what it would have been. In any case, they both would have made cutout, but just make sure you always go with the biggest decentration for a minimum blank size. Resolving prism, somewhere in the neighborhood of, from using this, of course, this example, 1.82 base out, 2.19 base down. On the blocking, should have been 1.5 out, 1.5 in, and both would have been 3 up. Next one, of course, is what's the first thing you always do? You zero the eyepiece. Main parts of the lensometer. I think everybody got this. We'll just skip that one. If you have a question, let me know. Okay, this next question at the top, which is, a little bit of a curveball, but I was asking you to try to visualize a lensometer. And initially, when I normally do this on the final, I give a lot of these because the lensometer is sitting in front of you, but I just kind of threw you one. So the idea of this is that the final answer would have been -3, -275 at 85. Because if you had skinny lines at 575, axis 175, and you turn the power wheel in a plus direction, 275, that's going to bring you from 575 to 3. But if you had skinny lines at 575, and we needed to have fat lines at 575, and then skinny lines at -3, you would have to turn the axis dial 90 degrees, and then that gets you this prescription. Next one was just simply math, but everybody did fine on this. If you rounded it down to 8.4, that's fine. But the official answer would have been a -8.4375. Okay, true falses. A plus power lens moves inside the lensometer in the same direction that the lenses move. That's true. When blocking a right single vision lens without decentration, you'll move the lens from the left to your right. So if we were on a blocker and you had a lens, and you guys are always moving it in, which means we're moving it from left to right. Left to right. But if it's out, it's going to be right to left. So this should have been false. When you're blocking a single vision spherical lens, you'll need to make sure the center dot you made on the lensometer is correct when you go to block. And on a spherical lens, a lens without astigmatism, that's correct. You really only need to make sure the center dot is lined up, because if you spin that lens, it doesn't matter. It's a sphere. So this would have been true. Next one, even though we have 3 dots on a single vision spherical lens, which this was one I actually meant to take out. This was a duplicate question. When we block a line bifocal, we use the 3 dots we put onto the lens to center it. Now, this was something, unfortunately, we didn't get too much in class, but there was a video that I posted that was put up by Dan that explained this in detail. You do not dot lined bifocals at all. We use the line bifocal to determine how to center it. So, therefore, when we block it, therefore, this would have been false. Last one on this page, it's false. When blocking a progressive lens, we use the MRP. The MRP is the same as the PRP, or the prism reference point. We're going to use the fitting cross. So this would have been false. Next, I think everybody did fine with this. How do you make sure you're blocked correctly? You turn it around and you measure. Tell me what you should do after successfully edging the first of 2 lenses. I was looking for anything from check the sizing, checking for the lens shape, making sure you didn't cut it upside down or backwards or something, safety beveling, and changing the edger to the other lens is also important. Fill in the blanks. After successful lens insertion, you sit your glasses on the counter and notice that they are out of standard alignment, which means hand tools such as the angling pliers, although I get some leeway here for some of your answers, and axis pliers could be used. So that's what I was looking for. Please give me 2 reasons why it's important to know the base curve. Everybody did great with this. Something to the effect of matching frame curvature, so the lens and the frame match. good for bevel placement. It's also good to match a patient's optics for their point of view. You don't want to give somebody a crazy base curve they've never had before. It can really throw somebody off. For hand tools, I was really looking for the actual hand tools. A couple of you threw in some of the other stuff because I had said before technically they're tools, but everybody pretty much did fine with that. Okay, tell me 6 things you would do at final inspection. I had a few of you leave off the check the RX. That should be like number 1. But we're also checking PD, OC height, seg height, standard alignment. All glasses must be in standard alignment when checked at final inspection. I've said that multiple times. You should also be checking 4-point alignment, essentially the bridge alignment. Cleanliness, axis, closed barrels. That's what we're looking for. Next 2, we have what would have been reading and intermediate glasses. So for the reading, all you're doing is taking the power of the lens and the add power and adding them together, because when someone looks through the bifocal, that's what they read. So we just essentially, for the right eye, we add these 2 together and get 625. Left eye, we add these 2 together, we get 575. As you can see my scribbling, my initial math was wrong. For the intermediate, we're taking half of the add. So essentially changing this to 150 and then just adding 150 to both of those. So we would end up with 475, 4.25. This next one was, again, another lensometer like visual thing. Had a few of you get this, a couple of you didn't, but it's okay. So the idea on this is if you had a lined bifocal lens in you, and I told you that it had an add power of 250, while the top of the backside lens, turning it around, is 375. So if we turn that lens around, put it in the lensometer, and you look through the window, and it says that the distance power is 375, then you have to turn the power wheel in a plus direction, 250, and when you get to 125, it's going to clear up again, and that denotes the 250 add. It's kind of a visual thing, so again, it's why I didn't give you guys 20 of these. You only got a couple. Okay, I don't know why I left such a big space at the top there, but this one is true when reading a lens in a lensometer. The PRP, or the prism reference point, is used to determine how much prism has been ground into a progressive lens, up here. In a progressive lens, the MRP is also known as the PRP, or the prism reference point. A couple of you just put in major reference point, which technically that's correct, so I didn't mark it wrong. Next one is the NRP, or the near reference point, is the place in a progressive lens where the full near power of the lens should be measured. 2 benefits of a variable focus lens. Really, the biggest ones are wider near, wider intermediate. That's why everybody gets them, because it makes the reading easier and the computer easier. Some variations of that I either gave partial credit for or I did not mark wrong. Forms of line bifocals, I think everybody did fine with this. Okay. One benefit of a lined bifocal over a no line bifocal, anything from a wider reading, no peripheral loss at distance. It could be a couple others, but those are the big hitters. One benefit of a no line bifocal, the big one on a progressive, really, most people, it's the cosmetic appeal. But in essence, it just as important, if not more, is the fact that you get an intermediate power, which does not exist in a lined bifocal. The numeric abbreviations that we're going to find in progressives, and we did go over this in class, if I was asking between 1 and 2, I was looking for a 1 add, 125, 150, 175, 2. If you didn't give them all, I might have gave you like half credit. A couple people kind of just put the ones that were in the middle. The book with the progressive lenses is known as the Progressive Identifier, and they do make a new one every year. Back to some true and false. We use the fitting cross in a progressive lens to measure both the segment height location and as a blocking point before edging. That's true. Next one, while you may find some instances in which a fitting cross needs to be above or below the center of a pupil, the fitting cross is supposed to be measured at the center of the patient's pupil. That is true in New Jersey, absolutely. Next one is false. A lined bifocal seg height should almost always be placed at the upper eyelid when you're taking measurements. So that's where you got to pay attention to wording. It's not the upper eyelid, it's the lower. So this is false. Next one, a line trifocal seg height should almost always be placed directly in the center of the pupil. Now, the book does show some different things, but I had specifically told you guys when we talked about this in class, in New Jersey, a line trifocal is supposed to be centered in the middle of the pupil. So that is absolutely true. If anybody wants to dispute that, please let me know. Final one on this page, a computer progressive is also known as sometimes known as a variable focus lens, and that is true. It is. When we have to neutralize the RX for a line bifocal, we would have to read the distance from the top of the front of the lens, and we would get the bifocal power from the difference between the top and the bottom of the back of the lens. That's simple. In aligned bifocal, the seg raise drop is the vertical distance from the MRP to the level of the segment top. That was straight from the book. Convergence, everybody got it. False on the next one. According to the state of New Jersey, a line to bifocal seg height should be... Oh, this is another one I had meant to take out. It was a duplicate, but this is false. This next one, according to the state of New Jersey, progressive lens fitting cross seg height should be placed at the center pupil. That's true. I guess maybe that was a duplicate as well. Next one, the PRP in a progressive lens stands for the pinpoint reference point. That is absolutely false. That's the prism reference point. Next one, when checking glasses at final inspection, all glasses must be checked for standard alignment. That's true, as I stated before. This next one, I just flipped it to see if I get anybody slipping, and it's a polarized lens blocks horizontally polarized light that reflects from glare surfaces and allows vertically polarized light to pass through the lens. So I just flipped those, so that makes this false. The next one I think everybody got, it was straight from the book. The three types of lens chucking are electric, manual, and pneumatic. You don't see manual ones anymore really, just pneumatic and electric, but manual does still exist. Okay. Electroplated roughing wheels are used for plastic and polycarbonate lenses, while bonded roughing wheels are used primarily for glass lenses. Right from the book. Rolling a lens reduces minus lens thickness. Polishing a lens gives the lens an especially smooth appearance. 3 reasons we should be safety beveling every lens. Prevention of breaking the lens, cosmetic, safety, and then I also have over here prevention of chipping. Chipping and breaking aren't necessarily the same thing, so I was looking for 3. I wrote 4. I think you guys could have came up with 3, and most people did fine. The types of plastic in the book, everybody pretty much got this. Optio, polycarbonate, nylon, cellulose, acetate, polyamide, carbon, and fiber. Okay, talking about a semi-rimless pair, excuse my scribbling, because I wrote the wrong answer at first. We were looking for a nylon cord. I'm talking about semi-rimless pair of glasses. A nylon cord actually holds the lens in place by sitting inside the grooved edge of the lens. Top of the next page. The figure 8 liner, which is what I made a very long video for you guys, sits halfway inside the top of a semi-rimless frame and then sits inside the grooved edge. Is used to hold the grooved lens in place across the top of the lens. It just goes in the top of the frame. It's the only place the figure 8 liner exists. Next one, a polycarbonate lens must be grooved in the grooving machine without any water or wet sponge present. That's true. Anytime you're doing anything with polycarbonate lenses, on a handstone, in the edger, on a groover, it's always dry. You need the heat to get through that lens material. According to the book, 3 types of eyewear categories were sport, dress, and safety. The exact specs of a drop ball test was a 5/8 inch steel ball, drop 50 inches. Standards are put forth by ANSI, while requirements for the use of safety eyewear are regulated by OSHA. Next one, a patient can purchase a safety frame with safety lenses in it without having the lenses marked for safety purposes. That is absolutely false. Anytime someone purchases safety glasses from you, even if it's for their own use, they still have to be marked as safety lenses. Next one, right out the book, talking about wheels in an edger. When the machine gets the wheel gets all chewed up. This condition is known as glazing. Kind of glazes over. It gets like smoother. And if the wheel gets to this point, you must clean it, and we call it dressing or stoning the wheel. I would have showed you guys how to do this in class, but unfortunately, as you know, we couldn't be there. Okay, true, false. Polycarbonate lenses have a lower ABI value than high index. That's true. False. A base curve is known as a back curve. A base curve is the front curve, not the back. True. A rotated lens can occur when a Zyol frame is warped due to too much heat during lens insertion. So if the frame gets too hot, you push it in there, it spins a little. False. A frame is considered to have Xing when the temples make a perfect X during closure. Xing is when the bridge is twisted. It has nothing to do with the temples. True. Temple parallelism is a crucial part of standard alignment. False. A skewed bridge refers to a frame that has one lens closer to the face than the other. Skewed bridge is when one lens or one side of the frame is higher than the other. False. You should always have some frame wrap on every pair of glasses regardless of the RX, and it's important to pay attention to wording. Always pay attention to every and never and stuff like that. A frame that has a pair of lenses in it that's like a -12, -13, -15, very, very flat lenses, you cannot put frame wrap in that patient's frame. They do not want curved lenses. They want flat because that's how they see. High minus, you should not be doing frame wrap. So that is false. True, when checking a frame that is out of alignment, you should always start by checking the bridge first. Absolutely, we do bridge, end-piece, temple, the BET method. Next one, when using a pupillometer and taking a patient's near PD, the pupillometer should usually be set at about 35 to 40 millimeters. That's true. The board that licenses opticians is the New Jersey, and some people left that off, but I didn't take away credit. The New Jersey State Board of Ophthalmic Dispensers and Technicians. MSDS, our old nemesis here. A couple people still didn't get it, but it's the Material Safety Data Sheet, and it essentially lists all the chemicals you come in contact with in the lab. Almost done. This one I tried to give some extra credit for. If you went above and beyond, I absolutely did. Some of the big hitters. Sitting level with the patient. Making sure the pupillometer is cleaned. It's calibrated. Checking for eye muscle imbalance. So if you look at a patient and they have one eye that floats and the other one doesn't, you can use something called the occluder, which I talked about briefly, to block one eye. So that way the eye relaxes and sits in a normal position. A couple things I didn't even write here in regards to the pupillometer, having the patient hold it, telling them to look through it like a pair of binoculars, gently pressing against the head. Normal functionality of the pupillometer. If we're going to use a PD stick, we want to make sure that the patient's eye is focusing at either a distant or near object, depending on whether you're doing a distance or near PD. Excuse my handwriting, it's pretty poor sometimes. So having the patient focus at the right point depends completely on what type of PD you're trying to do. The big one, another one, is pre-adjusting the frame for accurate OC and seg heights. So if the patient likes to have the frame sit a certain way, it's good to have it pre-adjusted. So that way when you take the PD, if you're using a PD stick on a frame, not the PD, the OC or seg height, that's going to be the position the patient likes to wear the glasses. And if you adjust them and they say, oh, that's too tight, that's too loose, it's going to raise or lower that frame and change your OC or seg height. So it's important to sometimes do that. Checking seg heights against usage. So if a patient, is using it for more distance viewing and less reading, then you might want to have a lower seg height. They're going to use it for more reading and less distance. You might want to have a higher seg height. I had told you guys about having patients that are really tall. You want to keep seg positions low. Someone who's really short, you want to keep seg positions high. So there's a lot of things under usage. You want to check their height against their prescription as well as their ad power. the higher a minus prescription can get can determine where you might want to put the bifocal versus higher a plus gets. Plus, people always like their bifocal positions higher in progressives. Minus people like it lower. High minus people like it even more low. To a general rule, and there's plenty of exceptions. And add powers, if you have a really high add power, it determines the way a corridor is designed. So if you have a really strong add, sometimes you got to bring it down a little bit more for somebody so it doesn't negatively affect their distance. Again, please ask me any questions you have on that. We could talk for a half an hour. On to the grids. Pretty much everybody did fine with these. A couple of hiccups, because what I was looking for was the oblique numbers here. And I tried to be fair. I gave you some that were oblique and some weren't. So it should have been right eye, left eye, right eye, left eye. And it's important to have known these grids, which I kept saying. So for this grid, this first circle is a half. The second circle is 1. The third circle is 2. The fourth circle is 3. And then this line is a 4, and this line is 5. So for A, we're at 2.5 at 90 plus 12. So 2.5 at 102. Or you could have said 2.5, and then this angle would be 78 degrees, because 78 and 12 is 90. So 2.5 at 78, quadrant 2. Next one, if this was a right eye, it's easy. It's right on the 0.5, so it's a half in. Last one on here is right at 2 diopters, and this is 14 degrees past 270. So we got 90, 180, 270, 284. So 2 at 284, or you could have said 2 at 76, because 76 would be this angle, and an additional 14 would give us the 90. Second grid. Okay, this one is a little bit more confusing only because the way these lines are constructed. The long line ends at 0.5. The one that has no line that goes all the way across, the inside is 0.25, the outside is 0.75. This first circle is 1. Second circle 2, third circle 3, line is 4, line is 5. So A is 4 up. B is 2.5 at 219. 51 degrees from here, and an additional 39 would give us the full 90. So we would have 90, 180, and an additional 39 is 219, or 2.5 at 39, quadrant 3. Last one, C, 0.75 base out, because this was a left lens. Okay, the top con. Okay, so this one, the line ends at 0.25. This little hash is 0.5, top and bottom. The box is 1. The first circle is 2. The last circle is 3. So therefore, A is 2.5. If this is 10, that means this has to be 80. 80 and 10 is 90. So therefore, 2.5 at 80, quadrant 1, or just 2.5 at 80. B, just down, it's 0.5 right on that hash mark. And then C, on the last circle, which is 3, 3 at 90, 180, and an additional 23 gives us 3 at 203, or 3 at 23, quadrant 3. Last one, the right curve. This one is the only one that you're going to have. The end of the line is 0.25. The first circle is 0.5. The second circle is 1. The third circle is 1.5. Then 2, 3, 4, 5. Almost all lensometers go to 5 on their grids, except the Topcon. So for this one, A is 4. And if this angle's 57, we would have 180 minus 57, which is 123. So you could have said 4 at 123 or 4 at 57, quadrant 2. B is going to be just in 0.5 right on that first circle. And then C is 2.5. And you could have said either at 8 degrees, quadrant 4, or you could have said 360 degrees minus 8 is 352. So 2.5 at 352. So let me know if you guys have any questions. Hit me up, and we'll go over it over the phone if necessary. Thanks a lot.